can hear myself clicking now.
I could always hear you clicking.
It wasn't the pen either.
We have two new guys working up there. Maybe that's what it is.
We're ready.
Good evening, Mark. Kirby?
Here we are.
Here.
All right, I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Board of Selectmen for Monday, October 6, 2014. Madam Clerk, would you lead us with the Pledge of Allegiance, and please remain standing afterwards for a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be advised that the Governor, Deval Patrick, has ordered that the United States flag and the Commonwealth flag be lowered to half-staff in all state buildings from sunrise to sunset on Tuesday, September 30th, 2014, in honor of Major Michael J. Donahue, U.S. Army of Columbus, Ohio, who was killed in action on September 16, 2014, in Kabul, Afghanistan. And also on October 3rd, 2014, in honor of Lieutenant Colonel Morris Moose Fontana, Massachusetts Air National Guard of Longmeadow, who was killed in an F-15C Eagle aircraft crash on August 17, 2014, near Deerfield Valley, Virginia. Thank you. The agenda for tonight, we'll have the reading of the mail, then input, both public input and selectmen's input, followed by town boards making appointments, then financial policies working group, affirm status of that group, followed by department requests, which include highway department plowing and sanding of private ways, approval of this list, fire, deputy fire chief employment agreement, C, staffing vacancy review for firefighter EMT, D, police Stanton Foundation Police K-9 grant application, E, finance introduce policy amendments, other post-employment benefits. Around 8:15, the town administrator, assistant town administrator for finance and budget, November 12, 2014, special town articles, determine the order of the articles and adopt recommendations on articles. B, Community Innovation Challenge Grant Program, which is followed by, lastly, other business, which will be consent agenda and minutes approval. Mr. Administrator, do we have mail?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I've included one item in the mail packet, which was a petition that was received from residents of Taylor Street, petitioning the Board of Selectmen to reduce the speed limit from the current 40 miles an hour to 35 miles an hour. There is a procedure for us to follow. I believe it was in 2010 that the board had established the, gone through the procedure and established the 40-mile-an-hour limit based on the study that was done. We, to my understanding, that we need to redo the study either to Matt or Jim.
Normally, the state,
Yeah.
the state actually is going to, the state engineers come back and set the limits. So you have to redo the study again and try and convince them that, you know, they take the 75th percentile typically of the speeds detected on the street for the period of time. So it can be it can go up or it can go down. And the last three, I think we've done, Jimmy, have they gone up? They've all gone up, they haven't gone down. So, you know, I don't think they go up any higher than they currently are, but I don't know how much they'll prevail they're only 4 years old. But I'm certainly willing to
We can look at it again, we
So
can
look
see
at
what
it.
the speeds are, and if the, I suppose if the speeds support lowering it, we can submit that, and if they don't, then maybe we don't submit it, so.
Well, it's my understanding too, is that we can, as a board, make a recommendation, but it's still, from what, a conversation with you and other conversations, that it is the state's final choice of what that's actually going to be. Is that correct?
Correct. The state engineers, by their calculations and, the number of cars on the street and everything else, they come up with their number, and that's it. Unfortunately, we don't have the authority to say higher or lower. When they did Goldsmith Street, they actually, used to, Goldsmith was always 30, and they brought it up to 35. And that's why when we rebuilt the road, we had them leave it unposted, so it became a, non-posted, thickly settled 30 zone again. So.
Thank
There
you.
are, I was just looking at, there's 34 businesses or something of that nature on Taylor Street.
So we will investigate and report back.
And that was it for mail?
That was it.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, may I address the same issue that you just spoke about with Taylor Street and the...
Yes, please.
Okay, my name's David Allen, I live on Howard Ave. At the same time that you're having the state take a look at the speed limit on Taylor Street, would it be possible to take a look at the lack of a truck exclusion on Howard Ave? Because there's a truck exclusion on Taylor, on Foster, and it forces a lot of trucks to go down Howard Ave, which is purely a residential street. So at the same time that they're doing that, could you also ask them to take a look at the truck exclusion, or the lack of a truck exclusion?
We can, but what I would ask you personally, if you could write a note or a letter just making that request to us.
Sure.
And then we can take it from that.
I'd be happy to act on that
Sure.
request.
The reason I ask is because on Howard, between Howard and the streets on and off of Howard, and there are a number of them, there's Lake Warren, White Pine, Stony Stream, Trot, Mason Brook, there are 154 homes between King Street and Foster, with no businesses in that area. Yet, on Taylor, there are 24 homes in that same King Street to Foster Street, and there are 37 businesses. And they have the truck exclusion, and we don't. So that's the reason for my request, to have that truck exclusion looked at.
We can certainly do that.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Truck exclusion is on purview, isn't it? No?
Well,
It was
you have
asked
to have an al-
4 years
You
ago.
have to have an alternative route.
What's that? Oh,
He's at the
oh,
beginning.
I'm sorry.
We just had this discussion on Neshoba Road, most of this is gonna be from memory, but you have to do a traffic count, and you need over 8% trucks, I believe, in the count. And I think he said it goes down to like a one-ton landscape truck, right up through is considered what a truck is, I think is what he told me. If you don't have over the 8% threshold, it doesn't qualify, and then you do have to come up with an alternative route that doesn't send trucks into other residential neighborhoods.
So we could fix the problem for Harwood Ave, and those neighbors would be very happy, and then wherever you're sending the trucks is the other neighborhood we'd hear from. So, but we can look at that.
Okay. Any other public input? Seeing none. Board? Melissa?
Just something really quick from my end. We had the 300th closing ceremony on the 27th of September. It was a really great ending, I think, to the festivities. We had the happy video play. That was really fun. So thanks to everyone that came out and showed their support. And sad to say it's over, but it's over. So thank you. That's it.
Mr. McCurdy?
I have nothing.
Develop.
They do, something about our schools. NerdWallet, which is a web organization that does extensive analytics, surveyed and looked at Massachusetts and determined the bang for buck in education, in simplest terms, the amount of money we're spending and the level of education and what it costs to live in a particular community. And Littleton was rated number 6 in the state of Massachusetts. And specific to actual bang for the dollar, actually number 1 in the state. So folks in town are getting a pretty good value for the education that given our kids, and the kids are doing very well, as we know, coming out of our schools. So we're appreciative of that firm.
It says Westford was number one.
Number one, in the overall, in the specific of bang for buck, it was Littleton.
Those failures. Those failures. Yeah.
So we thank you both then. Schools and Parks and Housing.
And like Melissa, I just want to thank everyone that worked on the closing and all the activities that happened during the 300th. And on one end, I'm happy it's done because all those meetings are done. On the other side of it, it's sad that it is all done. So.
Exactly.
But there are some follow-up meetings, and Legacy will still be doing some work, and the final financial picture will be showing how much the Legacy Committee can actually do. So those other activities that are going on throughout the year. All right, nothing else, we'll move on to town board appointments. We have Council on Aging and also the Cultural Council. Keith, do you want to give us a background on?
Yeah, on Council on Aging, we have an applicant who has been recommended by the council, and the applicant is here to be interviewed. And in fact, we have a number of council members here, so maybe we'll start there.
Unanimous proposal by the board that should be sent to you for election.
Okay. And Susan?
Not here. Okay, everyone's here except Susan.
I know, but where
Okay.
she fits.
All right, so we'll get back to Susan. On the,
Yeah, but can we just, do we need the?
you can appoint her, and I don't think you dare not appoint her, so. She, obviously, Susan Dunn comes highly recommended,
She
because
does,
you've
and
got,
she's actually attended our meetings as a visitor, and so, yes, and she was unanimously recommended.
and we appreciate so many
Yeah, I love
council
the
members
promotion.
being here.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Town Code, Section 15-1, to appoint Susan Dunn to a term on the Council of Aging expiring June 30, 2017.
Second. Moved and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? That was easy, that's done.
And thank you all for coming here to,
Now Keith, on the second one, Cultural Council, I think it's due an explanation of
Yeah, I
how
can-
many years people
yeah, I
can
can
serve.
explain. Actually, Littleton has had a cultural council for some number of years, and it's, under the statute, it's appointed by the Board of Selectmen, but somehow it had, the cultural council itself had fallen off the radar screen and had not been appointed by the selectmen for a number of years, and it seemed to be sort of a self-perpetuating group. So in 2012, we went through the appointments. There is a statutory provision that we wanted to make sure we were complying with, and it is that the statute has a limit of 6 years in a row that a member can serve on the council, and then they have to be off for a year before they could serve again. So we made a series of appointments and reappointments, and among those appointments that were made at the time were 3 terms that expired in June of 2014. And as part of the motion tonight, I'm asking that you continue those appointments of those 3 individuals until they reach their 6 years, which in the case of one of them is for 1 year, and for 2 of them, it's 2 more years. So that's part of it. The other is that we have, there is a vacancy on the Cultural Council. It's not a reappointment. Actually, we may have many vacancies. You can have up to 22 members of a Cultural Council. We've operated with, I think, about 8 or so, and of the positions that we have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, is the number of slots that we've typically filled. So we had advertised for applicants. We have 1 applicant who has not served before, and I think we have our applicant here is with us tonight.
Peter, would you like to come up and?
Rare thing to speak, but sure. I live in Littleton with my husband and 2 kids, one of them in Shaker Lane, one of them in middle school. I'm very much involved in the community events, have been co-chairing the Littleton Parents Association until the kids grew out of it. I'm the art coordinator for the PTA. I work with Mrs. Haddock to do various kids' activities during the summer. And then I think it was a conversation at the soccer field when somebody said, oh, you should, join the cultural council. I helped with the float on the 300 celebrations, which were great, by the way. I mean, I couldn't believe that was that many organizations. We were number 73. So I just looked up and applied. I didn't really think it through. My husband's babysitting today, so I just felt like I should just jump in. I did download the Massachusetts Cultural Council guidelines and read up a little bit on that. But that's about it. I thought I could just get involved in giving back to the community in a more, formal manner.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions?
I'd just like to say I'm a big fan, that we're very lucky to have her, so give my stamp of approval.
Thank you.
And I would look for a motion.
All right, move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to 962 CMR 2.04 to appoint, reappoint the following terms on the Littleton Cultural Council. A, to appoint Arpita Pathak, expiring June 30th, 2017, and to be reappoint Michael Kearney, 1 year, expiring June 30th, 2015, Ed and Kathleen Horniak, 2 years, expiring June 30th, 2016.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, town boards affirm the status of the Financial Policies Working Group. We obviously have that group working. I guess the official status has never been formed.
Right, there was a discussion at the Financial Policies Working Group meeting on September 16th that the group asked if, or requested that we bring the matter back to the Board of Selectmen for a vote to officially establish the group. It has existed in an unofficial capacity. We couldn't actually, for a couple of years at least, and has been doing a lot of work, and since it has been our practice more recently to, let's say when we established a working group for agricultural properties, that was, you voted it here, and in that case it was a couple of members of AgCom, a couple of selectmen, a couple of Conservation Commission members, but it all came from a vote here. So the Financial Policies Working Group asked to have that a similar vote on record, and so in crafting the motion tonight, I've followed the recommendation of the FinCom chair for 2 members each of the Board of Selectmen and FinCom, 1 from School Committee, all as appointed by those boards, and our 2 staff members who have been working with the group throughout, the Assistant Town Administrator for Finance and Budget and the Town Treasurer.
Betsy, anything you want
No, like I said, it's just what Keith said, they've been working and operating, doing good work, but sometimes questions would come up and there was nothing documented anywhere of exactly how they were started and what the decisions were, so we just wanted to have it formalized.
to? And I thank you for your research.
Yeah, CSI work right there.
Well, you went to a number of places to find what you could. So I look for a motion.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to affirm the establishment of a 7-member Financial Policies Working Group comprised of 2 members of the Board of Selectmen, 2 members of the Finance Committee, and 1 member of the School Committee, all as appointed by said boards, the Assistant Town Administrator for Finance and Budget, and the Treasurer.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
So do we have appointees already?
Yeah, who-
You had appointed Jim Carr and Paula Villa.
Oh, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to 4A, plowing and sanding of private ways.
This is part of our getting Jim Clyde home early.
I didn't know if you wanted to wait for Ted to show up.
I don't.
Sorry.
He's on
Sorry.
his way now.
Sorry, Ted.
Yeah, text us if you're watching at home.
So Jim, out of this list, you have people who approved and some with just small.
Yeah, most of the stuff is small. Looking at the memo again, it got changed a couple times, so the memo is a little bit flawed in the way it's written. I think Keith has the motion correct, because we had done it alphabetical, and then we decided to put the roads that needed work separate, and then they went back to alphabetical, so it's a little screwed up.
I see.
But Dan Tebbets went out and looked at all the roads. Most of it's pretty much what it says, just trim a few trees here and there. With the exception of Star Hill, which he wanted some pavement delamination fixed. I think it's too late in the season to get that done. I think it's something that we'll have to make them aware of and see if they can get it fixed next season.
But that'd be something they would do on their own.
Yeah, because,
Yeah.
And you'd still plow this season?
yeah, it's just, I think it's too late to really get anything done.
So obviously, any of the ones with the no issues were the 1 through 9 that are good, and then the conditions next to that. Got it.
And last year, you had a couple of anomalies. You had one road that you determined not to continue, and you had another road that was new, a request for a new road that had not been before. So, and in one case, the board discontinued the one road, and they disapproved the request for an additional one. This list is the list that you approved last year. It's the same roads that you ultimately approved last year. The only difference is some require work and some don't, and that reflects the current conditions as Jim has outlined.
So basically, we just need a motion that would include all the roads and their conditions, right?
Yeah, if you adopt the motion as proposed.
As proposed, we're all set.
Yeah, you're all set.
Ready?
I'm already,
Okay, do I have to read the whole thing? Move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to its August 28, 2000 policy on plowing, sanding private ways to approve the list of roads as recommended by Highway Operations Manager Jim Clyde in his report dated September 26, 2014 as follows. Approved without further conditions. Bar Place, Deer Run Road, Great Road, number 504 through 512, plowing only. Hiddenwood Path, Omega Way, Robinwood Road, Rock Place, Silver Birch Lane, and Whispering Pine Drive. Approved subject to conditions set forth by the Highway Operations Manager. Barron Way, Countryside Road, Cricket Lane, Green Needles Road, in parentheses, Neshoba Woodland section. Green Needles Road, back half, Oak Ridge Road, Star Hill, Wickham Avenue, 139 to 149, and Winged Cove Road.
Seconded?
moved and seconded, all those in favor?
Hey,
Aye.
Oh,
just a
excuse
question
me.
before we actually vote.
Yep, thanks.
Is there any direction to eventually getting any of these approved through town meeting? Are we on any kind of pathway? I was going to use road, but are we on any kind of pathway to getting any of these approved at a town meeting at some point in the future?
No.
Okay.
Unless
Thank you.
unless they want to do it themselves,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
bring it up to them.
None of them would meet the standard for the planning board for an accepted way.
Okay.
So none of them would be coming in through that avenue.
Thank you.
It has been moved and it has been seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Thank you. You go home now. Does the doctor only look to stay for?
No, I'm all set.
Oh, okay, all right.
I'm on vacation.
Well, then goodbye.
Okay.
Thanks, Jim, thank you.
Moving on, under 4B, management employee contract, this has to do with our new deputy fire chief. There's two avenues we can take as a board. We can discuss it with, I think we've all read it. We can go into executive session if we so desire to talk about the contract, which I don't think is...
I'm not recommending that you do. You have the ability to do it. These contract terms are familiar ones, and the terms are follow the practice that we've had with each time we've had a new deputy, whether it's for police or fire.
So before the motion, I'd like to give the chief the opportunity to speak on it, the procedure you took, and who the choice actually is.
Let me introduce, actually, I'm going to bring two guys up. One slightly out of order. First, I want to introduce Matt Moniz. He's our newest career firefighter that was just recently appointed off of the list that we did with that process that we did about a year ago. Matt's been a member since '99. Yeah, so a member has come up through the Explorers as a call member, and then was just recently taken off this list. He was in the Army for a four-year stint from 2010 to 2014, and so since he's been back, he is now available for the list that he participated in last year. So Matt is our newest member.
You're the ones around. Congratulations.
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 And Tom Clancy, he is our new deputy chief. We ran a process of which we had 4 internal applicants, and we had 2 rounds of interviews and an array of essay questions, basically outlining the future of our department, or to see if we can bring some fresh thoughts, new ideas, and look at possible change in direction, or if we continue in the method that we go. So we had several members of town boards, committees, outside fire chief, resident, that were part of that process. And it was a very difficult process. It came down to splitting hairs at the very end, and happy to say that Tom is our new deputy chief. So.
You gotta throw the hair thing in.
Anything you want to say, Tom?
No, I just, I'm honored to have such a prestigious position in the department. There's some big challenges coming up in town, and making sure the department is ready to meet those challenges will be a challenge in itself. But I look forward to the opportunity to work with the chief and help lead the department into the future, and continue the strong service we provide to the taxpayers and visitors of the town.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You mentioned some of the challenges. What might be 1 or 2, and what do you think has to happen to address them?
Well, the growth factor in town is, in my opinion, is the biggest factor, because it's unknown, other than it's pretty safe to assume that we'll have more call volume. How that pertains to staffing and response levels is one of the biggest challenges. And I say biggest because it's an unknown. We don't know until someone dials 911, how we're going to staff for that. The next challenge is continue to keep the call department vibrant and an integral part of the department, because when I got on 15 years ago, it was 6 weeks in-house training, and congratulations, you're on the department. Now, these young men and women take 6 months at the Fire Academy in Stowe, 2 nights a week and almost every Saturday, to effectively get onto the department, to be in the fire service. And while it provides us with a well-trained recruits, as you can tell from your military experience, when boot camp's a lot different than your initial station, in that you're taught, you're going to see, here's your firefighting techniques, and then you get here, we don't have a lot of fires. So keeping them motivated and continue to have these people that want to come and serve the community, and not get much sleep at night, and train to be EMTs, it's a huge time commitment. So that's another big challenge, because we really need a strong call department. So keeping that side of our department motivated will, in essence, fall on me, as I'll be overseeing training under the chief's direction. But that's a challenge I look forward to, because I enjoy training. And to me, those are the 2 biggest things. What happens with the town, and how we keep that call department, because we can't do it by ourselves. We need them, and keeping them integral will be a very important challenge.
Thanks, Tom.
You're welcome.
I have no questions.
Me either.
Nothing other than congratulations and welcome on to that position.
Thank you very much.
Deputy Chief.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
There's something you can do for me.
Talk about this.
We still have to do the most important part of this, is the contract approval.
All right, well, my suggestion that we not go into executive session, so we're moving to item 2.
Yes.
It's fine with me.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 48, subsection 42, to approve and authorize execution of an employment agreement with Deputy Fire Chief George Thomas Clancy for the period October 6, 2014 through June 30, 2015 at grade 12, step 1, with a one-year extension for the period of July 1, 2015 through June 30th, 2016 at grade 12, step 2.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Congratulations again.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
So you get the night duty?
I can no longer say not till Monday night. You know, so
Fun's over now.
it's over now. Just starting.
Now, the next part. This has to do with the fire department also, it's staffing vacancy review.
So tonight, we also need to do the staffing vacancy review for the vacancy that Mr. Clancy has created.
It's gonna be costly.
Job security.
So what we're looking to do with this, it creates another vacancy in the 24-hour shifts. It's a key position that does need to be filled. What we are looking to do is advertise and run another process and create a list that would be good for about a year. And we've basically tapped all of our resources from within the department at their, we've sucked as much experience out of that as we can get for right now, and if we can expand out to some of these other towns, there's a possibility that we may actually get somebody with academy training. And that would be a great opportunity for us to not have to send somebody else into the academy for a few months. But, so that's about where we're at.
Questions from the board?
Sure. Good. You know, I told you before, I'm all about process with this, and I hope you outline the process. I know you will. And you're the chief, you get to decide in the end, and I don't think this board needs to interfere with that. But we do get to have a say about how you go about doing the process, and I hope you do well by that. Having said that, the Personnel Board has put all the finishing touches on the document that you were part of starting. And the hiring practices stuff, and it couldn't get here tonight to the Board of Selectmen. It's coming up to one of the future meetings. So that document can help you. I think it might have changed a little bit from when you first gave us drafts of it. So that would be my only comment, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Vella?
Nothing, thank you.
Nothing either, so just look for a motion.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to grant the fire chief's request under the staffing vacancy review policy to fill one full-time benefited firefighter EMT position.
Second.
It's been moved in second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Chief and deputy.
We need a few more signatures on that.
Contracts, yeah.
What we say?
You get signing pens where you distribute them?
We're moving right along here. 5A.
We're under, 4D. Police, yeah, you,
Oh, yeah, I have it in the wrong order. Chief, I was putting it further back.
I serve at your pleasure.
If that's the case.
K-9.
K-9 unit grant, I hope you can give us a great background all about this, because I have a number of questions people probably have on this.
First off, this is something I've wanted to bring to Littleton for probably 20 years. And as you remember, when I came here, after I was appointed chief and I gave you my 6-month and 1-year outlook, this was probably number 2 on my list of projects to try and get through. The police canine, obviously, I guess I'm going to start first off just with the startup costs, and I'll talk a little bit more. Obviously, I realize that to try and get $25,000 out of the town to start this would be very difficult. However, right now, the Stanton Foundation offers a $25,000 grant for initial startup of the police canine unit. And basically, it gives funding for vet care and feed, also for 3 years. Typical startup cost is about $17,700. That's just for the dog, for, and all the initial setup. One part you don't receive about the grant is once the Stanton Foundation awards us the grant, when they're at the training for 14 weeks, they also reimburse the town $1,000 a week. So this grant actually is about a $39,000 grant when it's all said and done. So when it's all said and done with the $39,000, basically what we have is a trained canine, a trained officer, and a fully set up car. The one part of this, the one cost, if you will, that goes back to the community is the cost of a vehicle. My intention is to keep one of the vehicles that would normally be turning over at the end of the year. In this case, it would be car 5. Also, too, the police union and has embraced this and is going to take over the fundraising, which is typically what's done in the towns of Tingsboro, Westford, Manchester by the Sea. I could just go on and on. They all, most of them have utilized this grant, as you saw. And they do a fundraising which keeps the program funded. Typically, once the unit is established, the largest cost would be is if I were to come back to the town for a vehicle. The vehicle cost obviously is about $40,000. The union feels it's going to raise that amount and buy a brand new vehicle and or give that to the town. That's what their goal is. If not, obviously the turned over vehicle, only one person drives it, strictly the canine vehicle, so its life is much greater than a typical line car. It's a 7-year vehicle, similar to mine, even though it goes on patrol. It's only driven by that one shift and that one officer. There's no additional overtime. Training is done on shift. The canine would be typically probably a 4 to midnight shift or a 5 to 1 shift. It's on a heavy shift, so it doesn't require any backfill for overtime. With the additional items that are coming on in the community, the new 40B project, the new point, the mall, the typical, we're not an atypical community of 10,000 people also. We have the major exits off the highway, we have a lot of transient population, and we actually have a fairly high use of call-ins for the police canine. Unfortunately, I can't give you exact numbers because, there was never anything put into IMC, which was call a canine and when we can't get them. I look back, I asked my sergeants and things like that how many times, can they recall calling, and again, it's probably about 50% that we don't have use of a canine. That's not also one of my main projects. One of my main uses of this canine is also they're a great community policing tool. They break down barriers. They're great to deal with the kids. This isn't the canine of 20 years ago where you can't get near it, you can't go up near, you can't get near the car. Obviously, the car is posted police canine, But it's not the typical, the dog that you remember of 20 years ago, that if you got anywhere near it, it was trying to come out, the side window at you and attack you. These dogs are trained differently now. They're trained to be able to work with groups, in normal settings. And obviously, just like we expect our police officers to gear up and, do what's, commanded of you if the situation, requires it. So that's, kind of where I sit. I have 3 officers extremely interested in becoming the canine handler. Obviously, there's a process for that. We're lucky, most of you know Gordon Clark. He's one of our reserve officers. He actually was one of he was the chief trainer for the Middlesex County Sheriff's Department canine unit before he retired. He's been helping me a lot with this, and will actually help with the, process to select who the handler is if this moves forward. I don't see any downside to this. It's a great community policing tool, and it's a great law enforcement tool. No extra officers are hired to do this. Again, this is something that I've seen the need for years. This is both would both be a patrol dog and a search dog. We do have the occasional, Alzheimer's patient. We have the people from the nursing home that wander. We have people from the different facilities in town that wander. It's nice having the instant access when you need it. I'm not saying it happens 100 times a year, but when you do have it, it is great to have your own resources available to you.
I have a number of questions, but open to the board first if someone wants to.
Is also a drug sniffing dog?
Yes, it would be.
Okay. If a call comes for off shift, then there are overtime implications to that?
Yes, it could be, absolutely.
Have you projected any numbers? What do you think that might look like?
Obviously, it's a thought in my mind. It wasn't something that, obviously, that's something that's going to have to be controlled by policy and by, obviously, just on an inkling, they're not going to be calling the dog in constantly for drug sniffs, things like that. Obviously, it's a lost child or a lost, person, the bet's come off. There's going to have to be, there's going to have to be some pretty strong indicators for them to bring a dog in off duty for a drug sniff, and those, will have to be written in the policy and by order. So, I don't anticipate it being a problem, and it's certainly, if I have to stop it from occurring, if it's occurring too much, then obviously that's part of my job.
Now, will this also require some discussions with the union?
Currently, no. It's an assignment, and under the contract, there's no real problems with it.
Okay, thank you.
Well, my question deals a little money too. A couple of them, you mentioned the union is looking at setting up a 501c so that they can fundraise for this. $40,000 over what period of time?
Obviously it's it would be an ongoing, I think that's their initial blanch when they saw what a car would cost. I'm more concerned about if we can keep the yearly, costs, which are, according to the chiefs I've talked to, which is mainly I talked to Tingsboro, similar in size to us, Manchester by the Sea, obviously a little smaller, asked them what their costs were running. And, mostly it's food and vet bills. They're covered by the grant for 3 years. I've already been contacted, once it came out last week that I was looking at a canine, or 2 weeks ago, when it was brought up again at the Selectmen's meeting. I've already been contacted by several vets in the town that have said, we'll give you a cost service. Agway and a couple other places have talked to me about, we'll give you, we'll sell you food at, at cost, things of that nature. That's up to them, how hard they want to work at it.
It'd be useful to know what their fundraising plan is and over the period of time and the sustainment of it also, because that's part of the rationale being used here to support this, because apparently we wanted a zero sum on your budget annually at this point at least. Which gets me now to, if that doesn't come to fruition, you talked about using a current vehicle and not turning it in at the 5-year point or so. What would the annual cost of keeping that going be?
Well, actually, it's at 2 years, typically where the line cars get turned over at. Well, again, tracking, cars that we have turned over, we put into a reserve status, if you will, with single drivers. The costs keeping going at that point are minimal because it doesn't get the same line, treatment that a car that's running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week is getting. It's only running, one shift, a 5 to 1, 4 or 5 days a week, and that's it. So the vehicle gets rest, and that's, I know people laugh when you hear about, vehicles getting rest, but it actually is an important part of it. So the costs really are negligible as long as the turnover vehicle is in pretty decent shape, which, car 5 is the sergeant's car, tends to get a little less mileage, and its utilization isn't quite as high.
What would be a negligible anticipated cost for the vehicle?
Rebuilding a transmission,
In dollars, not what might work need to be done, but to maintain it for the year.
To maintain it for the year?
Usually-
I mean, without anything catastrophic happening to it?
Yeah, bad things can happen, yeah.
Yeah,
we're not down
I
that
mean,
road. No
generally,
trees
it's just oil changes we do oil changes every 3,000 miles, we do the brakes, as needed, and tires.
Fuel.
So, fuel obviously, but that's, no different than if the person was just on regular patrol,
So if we were to say $5,000 a year, that,
at most.
okay.
And
you
that's all
mentioned-
in the budget.
And in your proposal to us, you mentioned that previously you've called mutual support. And I remember like the high school, for example, when, we had you had the dogs come in there that time.
Correct.
Did we pay those towns?
No, we did not.
Which is now the flip to this
Correct.
now. If we were to lend the dog out because somebody else needed it, would there be any compensation that way?
No, typically, when we lend the dogs out, we ask the dogs to come in, there's no charge.
All right, thanks.
Some of my questions have already been asked, but going back to being called out of town, if they're called out of town while on duty, what happens to our own coverage?
Well, again, on the nights they're working, they're 3-car nights to begin with. They're actually a 4th car. This is the 17th officer,
Okay.
so it's the 4th car, so they go down by 1 car, no different than Mr. Knox, than if we get called out of town now to assist. We don't send out, we don't go down below 2 cars in town no matter what. But if we go up and send a car out of town now, it's the same thing.
Okay. Next question, and I hate to see this happen, but say that this is approved, and on the 5th year we're doing this, the officer decides to take another job. What do we do then? Because that dog is now trained with that one officer, and what do you do with the dog kennel that's at that officer's house? And
They move it and bring it to another trainer. They actually will retrain the dog with another trainer, which is, has happened because an officer's moved on or been disabled or whatever. Now, obviously, if the dog, gets, if the dog gets disabled, then, that's a different story. But if the trainer leaves or moves on, it's a 5-year commitment within the department. They all know that means no rank advancement, no anything, because, a sergeant, can't fill that 17th officer slot. It has to be a patrol officer, so they all know what they're looking at, the 3 that are interested. So basically,
it's a 5-year commitment?
It's a 5-year commitment from that officer.
And how does this change the budget in the future? Will you have to include something, a new line item, and will it increase your budget, or can you do it within your current budget?
I believe I can do it within my current budget. I'm very confident in it. The only ongoing costs, again, typically are vet bills and, food, and then, depending on vehicle. And, again, I'm pretty confident that I'm not, gonna be coming back to you looking for 50 grand certainly wouldn't be every 2 years, because one person would be driving it. It'd be, every 5 to 7 years if I was to ask you for a new vehicle.
Thanks.
May I ask that part of the motion that's proposed at this point, but add to it, because significant cost of a vehicle, and the proposal given to us shows that a 501c is going to be set up, and as you mentioned, the union is going to run this, is that a fundraising plan be part of the motion. And I would word it something along the lines that the motion would conclude with, that the chief provide the Board of Selectmen with a fundraising plan for the new vehicle by the first meeting in November of 14, so a month from now.
Do you have a problem with that? No?
Thank you. Make a motion. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the police chief's request to submit a grant application to the Stanton Foundation for the establishment of a police K-9 unit within the ranks of the Littleton Police Department, and that the chief provide the Board of Selectmen with a fundraising plan for the new vehicle by the first meeting in March of 14.
Second.
Moved in second, all those in favor?
March.
Thank you very much.
Did you say March?
November 14.
Someone did say March, that's my
My-
too.
my bad if
I
I
know you
did.
meant November.
We got a lot of time then, I guess.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're late. March of 14.
Yay.
Okay. All right.
The fire department wanted the dog, too? Is it going to be Dalmatian?
Right.
Yeah, Dalmatian.
Wow, that dog was popular.
Right, we gotta save the dog for
has a-
last. That's what I just learned.
Said I should have worn my dog and pony show tie.
Mr. Sanders?
Mr. Chairman, for the chief leave, can you address the liability with the town having a dog, if this dog bites somebody, where are we at with the liability on that?
Covered under our insurance policy, Mr. Sanders. No different than a police officer who uses force.
Thank you.
4E, moving on, other post-employment benefits, OPEB, introduce policy amendments and secure adoption.
Is it something we said?
I know.
OPEB just doesn't.
Attract the crowds.
Just wait 30 years and we don't have enough money to pay. People are gonna wish they'd attended the meeting tonight.
I hope the crowd did see that when the dog issue was done.
Yeah. It's just, it's what's gonna happen at town meeting. Remember the turf field.
Steve, please.
Yes, sir. Okay. This is the first rewrite of our OPEB policy since we first enacted it back in 2010. If you remember, just to refresh everyone's memory, OPEB is other post-employment benefits. It's to pay for the health insurance premiums for our retirees. Our liability is around $36 million or so, and we currently have just under $5 million in our fund. So we've been funding as we go, trying to build this fund up with appropriations year after year. The town currently puts in about $600,000 a year. The light department puts in another $250,000, and the water department puts in $50,000. So we've been building it and earning, and I put a little performance report in with the memo so you can see that we've been earning on the fund since we started it back in 2010. I think it's just under $700,000 in total earnings on the fund. So we've been doing pretty well with it. So this policy, like I said, is the first major rewrite, taking a lot of the narrative out of the policy and putting it into those addendums in the back, basically setting up the portfolio guidelines by type of investment. We had it all in words in one section, putting in a chart so it's a lot easier to understand and follow and manage too. It's something that myself and our investment advisor, Bartholomew, have used just to make sure that we're performing as we should be. We're also instituting a performance measurement tool, a little index that they've come up with that incorporates how the policy is structured using certain indices to come up with a benchmark for our portfolio. That's something that they hadn't fully developed up until this point. We've been pushing them to come up with something so we can have a good tool to measure. So that's two of the major changes. The rest of the verbiage in there is just little housekeeping things. This policy has been reviewed by the Financial Policy Group. It also was approved by the Board of Light Commissioners at their last meeting because it's a joint policy with them.
So is it safe to say a lot of it is house cleaning? I mean, because I tried to read through it, to be
Yeah.
quite honest.
It was a little hard to get
And
through.
once again, I don't know how you do this. Because I see these whole sections crossed out, and I'm trying to figure out where they went to. and-
Yeah.
No, in fact,
The whole
Jimmy and I were
sections-
there also, along with Betsy, and we did 2 meetings on this after Steve had actually done the work. And after the first meeting, it was just a little bit of a tweak. And as Steve said, you see a lot of it's redlined out. And what had been in prose, he put into a chart form, tabular. So it really does make the document a much easier document to use. And about the only thing, and it was personally that I had, I asked him, and that is because he has the authority to make many decisions as things go along throughout the year, and that some of those major decisions, he could actually just make them without even informing us. And originally it was going to be once every 6 months, there would be an update. And we just asked that rather than something like that, how about letting the Board of Selectmen know when it's happening and why it's happening? And Steve concurred, and that's what's in here now. Other than that, it was unanimous from the working group that was codified this evening.
That's the answer.
But that is post-action, actually. He's advising us what he's done.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
I have no questions.
And under the selectmen's policy, that you receive amendments at one meeting and you adopt them at the next. So following that procedure, tonight the policy's introduced, and 2 weeks from tonight, the amendments would be adopted.
So,
So receive tonight, we can make a motion.
first reading, then second reading, go to the second reading.
Right.
Yeah.
So we need a motion for the first reading.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to receive proposed amendments to the policy on other post-employment benefits, otherwise known as OPEB, trust investments as recommended by the Financial Policies Working Group, and to schedule the adoption of said policy amendments for the Board of Selectmen's next regular meeting on October 20, 2014.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're gonna lose all your crowd now.
Aye.
It cuts it in half, Steve, stay.
Not going to be anybody left.
5A1, special town meeting for November 12th, 2014. Finalize the warrant, and our job is to order articles that are basically already in a
Right.
specific.
Right, there are 14 articles that are in the warrant. They are in a proposed order right now, and, but the board needs to formally adopt the order, and then we'll post the warrant tomorrow. Under a group of recommendations that you first received a year ago from the study committee to increase voter participation, the board has adopted the practice for the last 3 town meetings of ordering the articles so that the financial articles appear first, followed by those requiring supermajority votes, which we don't have any in this warrant, and then followed by all other articles. So mindful of those 3 categories in the presentation of articles as you reviewed them as they've been inserted over the last couple of meetings, the order in which they've appeared, even as placeholders, has tried to follow that standard. So you've got a first set of articles that are financial. In this group, you've got articles 1 through 9, basically are financial. 10 through 14 are not financial per se. They're town bylaw amendments and road acceptance. So if you follow the recent practice of having the financial articles first and others second, then you could move articles within either of those groups, but you couldn't move them from one group to another. One of the things the board has tried to do over the years is to space out articles which might have a particular draw so that they're not all coming in the same place in the warrant. This one, I think, as I intimated before, the turf fields design article, I think is going to get a big a group of folks there. That comes as Article 7, which is halfway through, and it's near the end of the financial articles. And then I don't know that any of the bylaw amendments are going to draw a crowd, but we do have the road acceptance article, which which, as we saw, was at least of interest to a room full of people from New Estate Road and Agog Hill Road a couple of weeks ago. So if you have that article at the very end, Article 14, then you've got one halfway through and one at the end that we might be able to keep a crowd for. So that's the proposal.
Board, any suggestions or changes that you might want to make to that order? I read through, I don't see any problem with the order as presented.
Made logical sense.
If not, I would look for a motion.
You move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the order in which the articles appear on the warrant for the November 12, 2014 special town meeting, and to direct that the constable post said warrant forthwith.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. 5A2, November 12, 2014 special town meeting, article recommendations.
Yeah, this is where you get into the substance of the articles, and just as a reminder, the town meeting report booklet that we send out to all of the voters, that will go to our printer, go to the publisher on October 21st, which is the day after your next meeting. And that will give us enough time to get it published and then to get it out and mailed out 2 weeks before town meeting. So you have tonight and 2 weeks from tonight to adopt article recommendations there. And so what I wanted to share with you at least is we do have a first draft of the town meeting report. It's in no way finalized, but it is meant to illustrate what the final report will look like. It's got proposed motions if you so adopt them. It has a first draft of article explanations. I think we'll be doing some wordsmithing on some of them. It does not yet record what the recommendations are of the boards, because this board, Finance Committee, Community Preservation Committee, and others haven't actually taken their votes yet. FinCom meets tomorrow night to start that, to start their review of financial articles, and imagine there'll be some votes then. I would say that you have discussed the substance of a number of these articles at the time you inserted them, but we do honor a two-step process where, number one, you put the article in the warrant at one time, and then later you actually vote what your recommendation is on that article. So tonight you can begin to do the second group tasks. You can actually go through and make recommendations. If there are questions, if we wanted to get into detailed discussions, frankly, if you wanted to get into, Bonnie actually is away on a medical situation tonight, but that if there were questions that you wanted to ask of the materials that she's prepared, we could do those 2 weeks from tonight. But if you do feel that you have enough information to go on and wanted to deal with those issues tonight and only deal with a smaller number of remaining articles 2 weeks from tonight, I think that might be a good use of the time. And we could go through the articles one by one if you'd like.
I would think 1 and 2 would be pretty much, 2 of them we could dispense with.
1 and 2.
Yeah, Article 1 is an unpaid bill. We happen to have one of them for $315.
It's been a while since we've had one of those.
It has, yeah. Article 2 is Bonnie's list of proposed transfers among the line item budgets if there's no net increase in spending, it does move a total of $61,000 from a certain set of articles into others. The main, and we can talk to the departments too, if you at a later date, if you wanted to have a further discussion. But there was $10,000 needed to cover police dispatch. We would very much like to fully fund the Elder and Human Services from the property tax rather than drawing on MART funds, and that would require $16,000 to to go towards the Elder and Human Services Department. Right now, that amount is paid from MART funds to partially fund the director's salary. As we go forward with more transportation services, it's actually to our benefit if we only use the transportation dollars for transportation services. It's easier for us to justify going after additional funding for transportation. We're looking at expanding services, we're looking at doing more things, and I think the right way to account for that is by not having this salary charged to those funds. We did it as a stopgap measure when we transitioned from part-time to a full-time director, but and the Council on Aging itself had expressed some concern about how MART funds were being used, or how COA funds were being used when MART funds didn't cover transportation. Our answer to that would be to fully fund our staffing level from the general fund, and then to use the transportation budget for transportation services.
Are there one-time funds used here?
No. It's,
You're not pulling out of articles?
no, they are not. They are all out of reductions in operating expenses.
Has the Finance Committee
They get it tomorrow
gone through
night.
this?
They get it tomorrow night, yeah. Bonnie gave this to us on Friday, so. Another adjustment is $35,000 for veterans' services. That's a partial reimbursement, but where the caseload goes up, we are obliged to cover the costs. And we see that based on the actual caseload that we're not going to have enough budgeted this year. So those are the three areas of increase. Those would be paid for by a decrease in the $33,000 in the Middlesex retirement, and also from a decrease of $27,000 reflecting lower interest rates for debt service as a result of our improved bond rating.
Okay.
The next, Article 3, are ones that you actually discussed quite at length, and when you inserted them, the $50,000 for the master plan update, $35,000 for the Elder and Human Services Needs Assessment, and then at the most recent meeting, $212,000 as the town's share of the joint, the replacement of the joint facility for fuel that we share with Light and Water. The electric light commissioners are contributing $300,000 to that effort. And we have a bid in hand that we could vote to award right after town meeting if we can get this supplemental funding.
Stop there for a sec, please.
Sure.
On the Elder Human Services Need Assessment, since it's one of our goals, a direct addressing of one of our goals, is that rather than just being presented with the assessment, is that it be somewhat interactive between the Director of Elder Services, and the Board of Selectmen in how that's going to be developed and some of the key pieces of information that are going to be sought. And it doesn't need to be inserted here, but just as we go forward, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, I think that the key group was going to be the Council on Aging, and the working group that they've set up, team, I think, is more accurately. There's a subcommittee of the council that's working with the director on the needs assessment. Certainly, the Board of Selectmen can be part of that process. There's going to be a lot of interaction with town staff and other boards in the community as well. But we can certainly build in points so that the first time you hear about it is not, the first time you're engaged with it is not that you're receiving the final report. We can certainly have this group receive updates on it as we go. And because it's one of your goals, that's built into the process.
So we happy with Article 3?
Oh, yeah, I am.
On Article
Yeah,
4.
Article 4 and 5, we discussed at length when the Council on Aging was here, and you agreed on the numbers for both of those.
On 4, in the explanation,
Mhm.
I would just ask that we add the estimated cost for that first year.
Okay.
And do we ascertain if whether or not it could actually happen this fiscal year? Or did I, because we talked about going retroactive to July 1st?
Let me find that out. Estimated cost of a year and the start date,
Yeah,
plus the start date.
'cause at least my reading of the legislation was.
Okay,
do it the
we'll
same
we'll
year.
clarify that in the answer.
That would change the motion itself too, or excuse me, the actual article, because the date is in there right now. But right in the middle, almost dead smack in the middle, July 1, 2014.
Yeah, in that form, it's proposed to take effect this year. And we'll review that with council.
So hold off on,
I'm okay with it, just as long as, if July 1st is, if we can't do it because of the legislation, then we insert the date that it is allowable, as far as I'm concerned.
We'll double check with council on whether it's, whether 2014 or 15 is the earliest start date. Okay. Article 5, the personal exemption amounts you did talk about as well, increasing from 20 to 50% as the Council on Aging had recommended.
yep,
Article 6 is a proposal to insert $200,000 into the CPA fund. Article 7 for active recreation purposes. Article 7 is a proposal to ideally to take that number or whatever the appropriate number is out of that fund. There are a couple of other steps involved in Article 7, though. One is that we're awaiting a recommendation of the Permanent Municipal Building Committee on what the correct number is to do the project. We had two bids. One of them was just under 100,000. The other was almost up to 200,000. We wanted confirmation, presumably, that the lower bid is the one we can go with, in which case, arguably, the Article 7 could be moved at that lower number. Before this board takes a vote, I'd like to make sure that we have the PMBC on record as recommending one number or the other. The second is that if the proposed funding source were actually to be taking the money out of the Community Preservation Recreation Reserve, there needs to be a recommendation from the Community Preservation Committee to that effect. They took the first step at our joint meeting a couple of weeks ago, and that is that they found that the project, the turf fields, is eligible for CPA funds, and so they took that good faith effort. The next step would be for them to formally vote to approve the funding application. And that step has not yet been taken. But when they take that step, they too would need to know what does the PMBC think the right number is. So the Community Preservation Committee is actually scheduled to attend, there's a joint meeting with the Finance Committee tomorrow night with CPC on a number of issues. I'll be there, Bonnie will be there. So I think we can have a fuller discussion about it. But as far as adopting a recommendation on an article with a particular dollar number, whether that we're not there yet. We'll be there after we hear from PMBC and after we know whether the Community Preservation Committee has taken their vote to recommend use of
I'd
the
like to hear
funds.
what FinCom has to say about it all, too.
Yes, which they'll take it up tomorrow night, yeah.
now back to 6. Is there, we're taking money that is in an account already.
Mhm.
Some of it is specifically for active recreation. The other 100,000 is not, right?
Right, that's right.
Now, what happens, and the intention of this is to use the money for Article 7 if
Right.
everything went in that order.
Yeah.
What happens to that money now that it's now in the CPC? It's in their control then?
Yes, it would be. And on that score, what you may want to do, if the intent is to only put enough money into the CPA fund in Article 6 in order to cover the expenses in Article 7, then what you may want to do is wait until we finalize what the number is in Article 7. Say if it turns out to be 100,000, then you could safely vote only 100,000 under Article 6. I think you shouldn't put any less than 100,000 in Article 6 because all of the 100,000 that the planning board got for the Orchard subdivision, all of that 100,000 is for active recreation. All of it, therefore, is best, in my opinion, put in the CPA fund where you get the matching funds, where you'll get, $25,000 to $35,000 back from the state if you put 100 in. So, and since there's no other purpose except recreation that those funds are to be used for, I think that it's, it's not an unreasonable place to put it in the CPA fund, which is earmarked completely for recreation.
Does the earmark go with it, though, when it's
Yes,
transferred?
it does,
They-
according to this vote. This vote would put that $100,000 into the Community Preservation Fund Recreation Reserve. So it could only be taken out for recreation purpose.
It wouldn't have to be, if for whatever reason the next article didn't pass, they decided not to go forward, it doesn't have to be used for the turf fields, it just has to be used for active recreation.
That's correct, right, that's correct.
Is that for the full 200 or just the 100?
That's just for the 100, right, that's just for the 100. But it would also be the case that if, let's say that you decided you wanted to put 200 in, even if there were only 100 that was needed for the turf, then you would have 200 in completely for recreation. That is, if Article 6 passed as written, then you'd have 200,000 in recreation reserve, couldn't be used for any other purpose.
Okay.
It would be there for any other recreation project.
Yep, that's fine.
But it would also mean that you'd get 50, instead of 25,000 in matching funds, 25 to 35, you get 50 to 70,000. So it's,
Which could be used for any purpose.
which could be used for any purpose. The state matching funds are not earmarked
Right, matching funds could be used
for any bottom line
Okay.
thing. So,
So I would hold off on 7.
yeah, frankly, I think 6 and 7, to the extent that they're set,
Okay.
we may want to wait until the number's finalized, and then we can come back to that. Article 8, tax increment financing, there's no, the TIF review committee has met once, reviewed the proposal that was received from Potpourri Group. We had some questions and concerns about the proposal, communicated those back to Potpourri Group, which will be submitting a revised proposal tomorrow, and then reviewing that revised proposal with the TIF team this Thursday. We're looking to have another TIF meeting at 6 o'clock on Thursday, right before the planning board meeting. I did hear back from Betsy and from Mark Montanari that they would be able to go to attend the 6 o'clock meeting. We can report back to this board on how that goes, but we have not reached an agreement with this group. Yeah.
More or less, this article is really an endorsement of the the TIF program. That the numbers would, I mean, we're voting Article 8 to support tax increment financing. The
Well,
numbers are going to be adjusted according to the
Well-
negotiation. That can be done at a, you know, those numbers can be adjusted.
Well, it's been well, let me say that in fact has been our practice, that three times before, we've had town meeting votes that have authorized a TIF, and then the TIF was subject to negotiation with the Board of Selectmen. And that's what I proposed the article be with this group, but their consultant said, no, that's not how it works. You're supposed to bring the whole deal as negotiated to town meeting for approval. Lynn, the consultant that was here from, that was with the Potpourri Group.
Their consultant.
Their consultant.
Okay.
Not our consultant, not our town council, their consultant. So we said, all right, well, if that's the way you feel about it, then we'll accept your article, which
But
says.
that's a
it's
negotiation point. They don't get to tell us how to, you know,
So,
that they're going to dictate the terms of what.
well, and of course, it may be moot if we don't reach agreement by the date of town meeting, and they want, keep hope alive, the only way to do it is to have the article vote to authorize the selectmen enter into the agreement. That said, we have typically been aware of what the basic business terms, even if we didn't have signed agreements with the two most previous TIFs. I don't think I would defer to those who were here in 2006. I arrived the next year, but I don't think you had worked out what the business terms were with the TIF for IBM, because your town meeting vote was in November of 2006, authorizing a TIF for 550 King Street, but IBM didn't even announce they were coming here until August of 2007. So you had an authorization vote first, and then you actually reached a deal. Actually, it wasn't until 2008 that we signed the paper with
Well,
IBM.
I think we're far better off going as we had been going, where the selectmen are the negotiating authority on the matter, and the town meeting gives the selectmen the authority to do the negotiation.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we end up on town meeting floor with some, people suggesting that this amount be adjusted by, $5,000, whatever the number is, just
Yeah.
throw a number out there. I think what this article ought to say is, yes, we as a town want the selectmen to negotiate an agreement, not inconsistent with previous agreements. And
Well, let me say, that's our negotiating position right now, by the way. It is to be mindful of what the previous parameters were of agreements
we don't want to have a negotiation session on town meeting floor unless we have several nights planned for this article. And it'll go down flaming.
I agree with Alex 100% on that one. And the collateral benefit also of this, rather than what is pretty darn close to a gun to the head at this point, their approach when they came in the last meeting, and we had to get it on the meeting for the November town meeting, this gives the town some flexibility, and it gives them the opportunity to have a TIF approved. And then, so rather than trying to negotiate it, as quickly as possible, and I don't mean to do it leisurely afterwards,
Right.
certainly due diligence and, with due consideration to the parties involved, but it gives us an opportunity, obviously, to go back and forth for a little bit longer, rather
Yeah.
than over the next 2 weeks or so.
I think it would ultimately be in the town's best interest, because, we're certainly interested in having having a use that's nice and clean in a location that could be otherwise. For the use to be a good neighbor to nearby residential properties. Those are all important things. Having significant investment be made in town where they would be here for a long time. If you're putting $49 million into a project, you want to be here long enough to get a return on your investment. If you're going to bring in hundreds of jobs that are new to the town and have folks who become part of the community, That's good too. These are all good things. But I have to say, the negotiation, we're far enough apart of where their proposal compares to proposals that we've approved in the past, that it may take more time than we could accomplish between now and town meeting.
I can't imagine that they wouldn't see the wisdom in that, rather than trying to have this all hammered out, and even if it is all hammered out, go to town meeting floor and have it re-hammered.
Yeah.
And I think this article really ought to be consistent with what we've done
With the practice
in the
we've had
past.
before, yeah.
We want the town's endorsement of the practice of tax increment financing, and then we will proceed in their best interest,
And-
keeping in mind
Right.
that
and
we
reach
have
a
done
hard-
so twice
And reach a
before.
hard bargain, which is in the town's best interest, because that's why we're here.
Sounds
Yeah.
good.
And I'd ask, in the negotiation piece of this, is that we tie some of this to milestones also, rather than just promises. You know, where, okay, we're going to increase the value by X number of dollars, and that's pretty quantifiable and objective, but we're going to increase employees by 150, arbitrary number for this discussion. And only 15 materialize. And we've had given this TIF based on a promise of 150. I think that there should be some milestones tied to any of the numbers that we come up with in that process. Let's consider that. And then, separate from this whole process, a really good discussion on TIFs in general, and how as a town, we want to apply them, whether across the board or some policy, as we continue developing financial policies. And I know we've mentioned this a little bit, but we're getting to a point where if we had something codified right now, we might be a step or two ahead of this particular one at this point. So going down the road for that piece.
Yeah, good idea.
Very good. So we'll hold on that article tonight, Article 8. Article 9, you discussed at least twice before on amending the revolving funds to pay for our animal control agreement with Foxborough.
Yep, no problem with that one.
And you've discussed now more than once the 3 bylaw amendments, of 4 actually, adding a FinCom seat on the CPC,
That's easy.
adding the residency requirement for FinCom members,
Yep.
also adding a residency requirement for all appointed town board members. And then lastly, adding a section on the removal for cause of appointed town board members.
Let me ask a little bit about that. In the past, we've talked, over the various years, here and there, we've talked about, what was the procedure for removing an appointee, and we've always heard that you really couldn't. And are we apt to come up against the AG's office on this, disapproving it?
It's possible. The language we've lifted is from a state statute, though. The one town board that we can point to in the general laws, where the appointing authority, Board of Selectmen, has the power to remove them for cause, is the Zoning Board of Appeals. So what this article does is use the language that's found in that statute, Chapter 48, Section 12, to be as the proposed standard for removal of any other appointed board member.
Do we know of other towns that have done this?
There are, I did a search, and there are a number of towns that have similar language. What you can't do a search of as easily as how successful are towns in actually upholding this language. My own experience with this or similar language was not, was that the judge took a look at the language and said, that's nice, but I don't think you have the authority to do it. But
Well, I think that's a concern here. I mean, we're going to go into this discussion and do this, and we've been talking about this for years, is what recourse does an appointing authority have once an appointment is made? And it's always been, well, you don't have a lot of recourse. And to just come up with this, with no change in laws or nothing there.
But we don't have anything in our bylaws right now that, one way or the other, that authorizes an appointing authority to remove.
Except
An appointed
PMBC
member.
by its wording, and it's implied in the PMBC wording, serves at the pleasure of the selectmen. And that's never been challenged. Now, I'm unaware that we ever actually tried to remove anybody in the PMBC.
Well, that's the other
That's
thing.
wording that has
Yeah.
existed for some time.
Yeah, and it will probably, if challenged, it will probably be successfully challenged.
Why do you say
Where do you
that?
develop the probability from?
I think that's where, because, various times since 2006, we've looked at this about, appointees, and every time we come up with, there isn't really a good way to do it without being overturned. And that was done, by various people looking at it.
I've heard that anecdote.
I'm not against what this is. I just want to make sure if we do it, we do it right, and it will be upheld by the AG's office, and when we do enact it, we aren't locked into a legal battle we don't need.
First thing out of the gate, I think that I'm not aware that we have a preliminary off-the-record opinion from the AG's office, so sometimes we do, whether this language, this proposal will get approved if we submit it. We can make inquiry, but I don't think we've done that. That said, if town meeting votes to approve it, then it only takes effect if the AG in fact approves it. So that first hurdle we will either meet it or we won't. But after town meeting approves it, and then the Attorney General will officially rule on whether this language takes effect or not. If she rules that it doesn't, then we don't get to do it. If she rules that it does, then we live to fight another day, and then it is simply a matter of, if the standard is removal for cause, then there's plenty of case law out there what constitutes cause, and none of that is pretty. None of that is pretty. It's a public hearing. It may be interesting television for people who are tuning in, but it will be one of the least fun things that we would go through. But you put the language in there, and at least there's the ability to use it if the circumstances require it. And short of that, there's no substitute for asking for a resignation. If for an appointed board member or an appointed official, that there's no substitute for the certainty of a resignation, because then at the end of the day that the person whose services you wish to terminate have voluntarily done so.
But going back to, we're asking town meeting to vote this. And if we have questions about this, then astute people at town meeting floor are going to wonder too. And if I know anything about town meeting history, when you haven't bridged all those gaps, then it fails. And then we don't have this option. And all I'm pointing out is we better have one that we can say will be sustainable, and the townspeople will understand we've done our homework and we can make a go of it. Otherwise, I fear they'll vote it down, and that is the end of the discussion.
And if they vote it down?
If they vote it down,
they
then
vote it
we are
down.
the same as we are today,
Yeah.
because we don't have the authority.
Well, presumably, we have this in here because we see a need to do it. So I don't think we should take if they vote it down, they vote it down attitude. If we want them to support it, we need to provide them with enough background information that they can comfortably support it and understand it's a tool that we can use when we need to use it.
What other possible tool do we have right now? This would be the only tool that would come. The chance of this ever happening is remote anyway, but if it were to happen, we have something to fall back on, and see this person could be removed
Yeah.
cause and.
Well, and ultimately it comes down, and from my experience, it ultimately comes down to whether the person you remove wants to fight it or not. And because if they don't fight it, and you take in your act, and it's official, it's final, and you move on. If they fight it, and that's the situation I encountered, 10, 20 years ago in another community, then a judge decides, and whether you've met your standard for costs or not, so. after
All
you-
under the
after you-
rubrics of
after you
local
spend a few
control.
bucks, yeah.
All under the rubrics of local control.
But, I mean, one of the questions will be asked is, okay, how many times have you needed this over the last 10 years? And, we aren't in a position to talk about any time we might have considered that, so why is it here now? Is it here now for a specific person or reason? And that will throw up.
Why did we ever go through the process of having a recall for the Board of Selectmen?
There was a reason that occurred.
Have we had a recall?
No?
So what's the
There were
difference?
some people that wanted to exercise one and had to have the authority to do it in town meeting floor.
But
Did they do it?
They didn't.
Was there a recall?
So we haven't,
They had an election instead.
And elections are much different, and messing with an elected official that the people duly elected is a very different set of circumstances
Absolutely.
than a particular board appointing somebody to serve at that particular purpose that the board has selected them for, or appointed them for.
Now, understand something, I'm not against this. If we want it to pass, let's make sure we put down enough information for it to pass.
And I hear what you're saying. I believe you're taking a very narrow view of this. I personally believe this board already has the authority to recall a person that they've appointed without this. And then if somebody did want to test it, then we take the test. Because if you're an appointing authority, why could you not logically have the authority to remove that person? This codifies it, strengthens it, I think, an authority that boards throughout the Commonwealth already have. Now, I'm not the Attorney General, and I'm not going to get to rule on this, quite obviously, which actually chaps my jaws a little bit, because you know where I am on local control, and frankly, how much of an illusion it is to most of us. And this is a very good case in point, where we think we have a very workable bylaw that would serve the needs of this town if necessary, yet it's going to have to go to the State Attorney General, so it's mother may I have permission. That's a total paid political announcement that's separate from this, but it comes in, it does still come into play.
That's because, unlike the federal government, which is a creation of the states, that we municipalities are the creation of our state. So, we don't exist except by the states.
Pleasure.
Well, we've never had anybody challenge it, have we?
we're getting pretty deep here.
We've never removed anybody, and we've never had, we don't know if there's a challenge.
Well, there'd be a little quiz on federalism after the.
Okay,
We get to the federal papers in Madison.
Yeah.
back to the case of recommended. You want to hold off until we have another discussion, or you want to go forward with it?
I like it the way it is.
I have no problem with it.
So if so, the holds would be, just from the discussion,
6, 7, and 8.
yes.
That's what I covered,
6,
too.
7, and 8.
All I would ask with that one is that we get more information to be able to present on town meeting floor.
Fair enough.
Absolutely, sure. We should do that. We should have a convincing case, and I will have our attorney who will defend it.
And that's what we
Address
want
that.
them to do, is to
Yes.
defend the position.
Yes, exactly.
The difference between asking an opinion and asking for a defense.
Right.
So we have, I lost my,
I think it just said, Joe, 6, 7, and 8 are
Yeah.
the only ones not.
yeah, so looking for a motion that would include everything but 6, 7, and 8 for now.
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to support the following articles and direct the preparation of motions to be
I don't have
moved
it
and
in
seconded by
large
said board. Articles 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Did I do the math right?
Yep.
Second.
We moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Only 3 to talk about. Bye, Bets.
Thank you. See you tomorrow night.
Thanks for coming back, Dave.
Then we need somebody in the audience.
Then we have 5,
5B.
B.
And you told me Acton's taking the
Yeah,
the lead on this.
the town of Acton is writing again, now for a fourth year in a row, a proposed Community Innovation Challenge Grant for the Crosstown Connect program. We've been funded 3 times before. We think we'll get funded again this year. We always try to expand it a little bit more to make it more interesting to the funding agency. This year, we're expanding it by adding Devons to our scope. There was a very successful transportation workshop, regional transportation efforts that was hosted at Devons last Thursday. It was jointly sponsored by the Magic subregion of MAPC and the Fitchburg Line Working Group. We had about 60 people there, a lot of, we had a few state legislators, a lot of transportation professionals, a lot of representatives from many of our communities. Devons would like to, while not yet prepared to formally join Crosstown Connect, they want to come along with us for the ride and, as many others have done, and explore the issues together. The issue that we have identified, is, which is something we're all looking at, is the so-called last mile. How do you get people from the transportation hub to where the businesses are, to where they work? For Devons, the proposal is to explore all the decision-making framework for adding a shuttle between Devons and Bristol-Myers Squibb, their main businesses, and the Littleton commuter rail station. We have similar last-mile issues between Littleton Station and Littleton Common, between Littleton Station and Westford, between Littleton Station and Boxborough. So and all of those issues will be folded into this part of the project. There are also 2 specific fixed route models that Crosstown Connect wants to explore. One is developing a fixed route service to Emerson Hospital, and the other is to Clock Tower Place. Both of those would be more centered around Acton than they would us, but it would be, I think, an important first step. We're finding that the Emerson Hospital is where, most of the COA shuttle rides are going to the vicinity of Emerson and all the medical services there. Clock Tower Place is was one of the first business partners in Crosstown Connect. They have a shuttle between that facility in Maynard and the South Acton station. So Acton's doing the work. Again, Doug Halley, who we met last summer, continues to be the coordinator for the project. He's the public health director in Acton. Acton is again letting us all borrow Doug and writing this grant application. He's written 3 winning grants before, and we hope that this will be a 4th. So the Littleton Selectmen's Board vote tonight would be to sign on to that grant application, and we'll send in a letter of support. And Friday is the deadline for the application. And we decided on what the grant would be last Wednesday.
What was the grant for last time?
Last time, it was for some additional funding for dispatching. We only got $40,000. I'm not certain what the dollar amount is that we're going to go for a grant this time. I'm thinking it's going to be over $100,000. So our largest award under this program was $184,000 back in round 1. And the scope that we've outlined, I think, could easily be between $100,000 and $150,000. So it will help us pull together a lot of the things we're working on. And regarding just commuter rail in general, it was announced at the workshop that Thursday, October 22nd, right now, for planning purposes, is the proposed date for an event, which would be held at Littleton Commuter Rail Station for the MBTA to officially announce
What date, the 16th?
the new schedule, the 22nd, Thursday the 22nd. We haven't confirmed the time or the specifics of the event, but we hope to, but they do hope to actually finally issue a press release on the increased service for Littleton Station at an event that would be attended by as many state and federal officials as they can round up.
Numerous times you said "we have" relative to this. So we have, for the last 3 years, joined Acton as the lead community?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so this is a rejoining or a continuation?
Rejoining, yeah, that we being, last year, for the last 2 years.
Continuation.
Yeah, for last year was the 7 towns of the Crosstown Connect group. The year before was 5 towns. And this year, we hope to get as many of the towns to repeat, plus Devon's this year.
So it's the 4th year in a row, and on October 3rd is when we decide on a suspense of 10 October, so 1 week. And it's the 4th time we've been doing this?
Yes.
I guess the actual grant writing will be a little bit more organized?
Well, the grant writer, Doug Halley, has written 3 successful grants before and sort of has the template for. The only thing we hadn't, there were several potential grants that were being shaped, and we just reached agreement on what should be submitted.
Well, if we're going to vote to join in something like that, and there were other options,
Yeah.
could we not have been presented those options previously?
Well, you have all 3 of them here.
I think we're voting on one thing, aren't we?
No, you've got creating the model strategic plan for the last mile service, which is what I advocated for last week. And then the other was to develop model fixed route services for Emerson Hospital and Clock Tower Place, which is all they had as of the week before.
This is semicolon and also. So we're voting on
The grant.
this option.
Yeah, yes, the round 4 grant application would be the model strategic plan for first last mile that involves Littleton and Devon's.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to borrow a phrase from Alex,
Yeah.
and that's a little bit of process, please. I'm going to vote for it when the motion happens, specifically. But to have options being presented and then only one is brought to us for a vote,
Yeah,
I think that's a foul. We should have had an opportunity to have input as a town as to what we may have liked to have seen and had some dialogue and input to the folks who are participating in the actual presentation of this. So you and the other town administrators, or whoever they may have been, I'd ask that those sorts of things happen in the future, not just specific to this, but in general terms, please.
well, we could, except that the reason why this board sends me there is so that when we're dealing with 6 other towns, that when we reach an agreement, we bring it back to our 7 towns. If you're suggesting that we have that we not work things out at Crosstown Connect and then bring them back, then I think that's opening up.
No, I'm not asking to have open negotiations across all 7 towns and the various boards of selectmen of those 7 towns.
Yeah.
But how would you know what to pursue, or at least the feeling of the Board of Selectmen as to what to pursue as you are negotiating?
I didn't have to look any further than your goals. You adopted a goal for, your goal number 3 is transportation commuter rail plan for shuttle service improvements when Fitchburg line upgrade is completed, Crosstown Connect Transportation Management Association shuttles transportation services, so that's what I brought you back in this grant.
And I do think we do, we get updates on a periodic basis, so although I understand your process question about it, we're fairly well informed. I mean, it's not like Keith goes away and comes back and says, well, here's what I want you to vote on. We get regular reports and we get briefings by email and so forth.
Okay, I missed the ones before June.
Yeah.
So, if all this has been discussed and bantered about prior to June, I stand corrected. Or in this case, sit corrected.
Well, I think you have a valid point in making sure we have a process.
Right.
And maybe we
I guess-
formalize it a little
Well,
more.
and I guess what I would say is that I've been careful for the last three goal-setting rounds at least, to ask for and receive the board's express endorsement of what the goals of Crosstown Connect are, and you've adopted them in your goals. And so this one, it seemed to me, while there might be one that cries out for more process because it's something new we haven't thought about before, this one didn't seem to me that it did, just because it so closely matched what your goal was, so.
Yeah, and maybe, the speeding train is fastest when it's right in front of your face. This is 2 meetings in a row where we've had a do or die on a particular evening, on a presentation. Where we had potpourri, what we had to decide last meeting to come up with a warrant article. Otherwise, they weren't even going to come to town. This is on the 3rd, and we're meeting on the 6th with a suspense of the 10th to get the... So the argument I'm making not is against this particular issue, other than how we go about in trying to get rid of those real fast suspenses, so to speak.
Yeah, we can, if we reached closure on what the grant application was going to be, I didn't think that one that only went for Emerson Hospital and Clock Tower Place was enough, and worked pretty hard in the last week to add something that looked a lot more like what our goal is in Littleton.
Thank you.
So.
What's for motion then?
Okay. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to join the town of Acton as lead community, along with other Crosstown Connect communities in Devens, in submitting a Round 4 application and the Community Innovation Challenge grant program to create a model strategic plan for the last mile, first mile service between Littleton MBTA Commuter Station and Devens, and also develop model fixed route services to Emerson Hospital and Clock Tower Place.
Second?
Moving in second, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Thanks.
Now on to minutes. I know, Paul, you had found something small.
It was small, yes. Line 315. And Jennifer, I'd sent that to you.
How depressing to think we have 315 lines.
Well, yeah, and it's actually even more than that. Anyways, 315, the sentence as it reads now is Treasurer Stephen Udi and Assistant Accounting Finance Bonnie Holstein, Assistant Administrator, excuse me, for Finance Bonnie Holstein, at several, and then I think times goes in there.
Good otherwise? Make motion to accept the meeting minutes with the changes outlined by Selectman Novella from session held September 22nd.
Can I second? Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the minutes from September. Yeah, it is September. 22nd. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Ask a couple inputs for future meetings. I'm unaware, so help me if I've missed this. When the town goes out to buy services and things that might be under the state regulations as to bid process and like, do we have a Littleton First policy where we're asking our departments to go to Littleton businesses first before they go anyplace else?
Not that I know.
Yeah.
Is that something we could talk
discussed that
about?
once, and we didn't do, for whatever reason, we chose not to do that. It was a discussion item.
Is that something we could put on a future agenda for that discussion again?
It's fine with me.
Sure.
Appreciate that. I'd ask that the agenda and the actual package get to us a day sooner, please. Getting the package on Friday afternoon is tough. And with the agenda when it comes out, I'd like us to have the opportunity to come back to you if there's something that we thought was missed or whatever we'd like added, or at least have an opportunity to talk to you as the chairman about, rather than it already be submitted and posted, and then I find ourselves inside the 48-hour window. So by getting this Thursday afternoon in the evening, pretty much puts us in that. And then by,
So you want to see the draft agenda before it's posted?
if we may. And I'm just asking for one day earlier on that.
That's easily done, because I send it to the chair and vice chair typically on Wednesday. Yeah.
Wednesday afternoon, I got it, yeah.
Yeah,
And then I'd ask that we get the package on Thursday.
I can't do that.
Because right now, our policy actually says to do it on Thursday.
No, it doesn't.
We already had the discussion once, and I pointed it out to you, Keith, where it does.
You get it on Friday.
Mr. Chairman, I'm speaking to you, sir. I'm asking for that consideration, please.
Yeah, but can you find the policy for me that you just talked about?
We'll take it out right now.
Yeah, we had the discussion and the board voted not to have
We did discuss it.
Thursday as
We
the
did
date for the
discuss this
packet.
before.
No, with you.
Practically.
We here.
Yeah, well, you were here.
I asked about it.
You
You
had
agreed that
that
practically it
discussion.
does not work.
I was similarly dismissed, as I am being this evening, and I frankly don't appreciate it.
I wouldn't say that's
We
happening.
can schedule it
Happens to
for,
me all the time,
we
Paul.
can schedule it for discussion.
I'd ask that then, if we may. Let's just schedule it for discussion. Is that fair enough?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Make a motion to
But
adjourn? No?
But while we're on agenda, I've always worked by the idea, if you had something you wanted on the agenda, you either sent it to Keith or the chair and said, I'd like to have this on the agenda, and I don't think there's a time frame. Well, that, when you get a phone call and somebody says, I have a problem with this, that, and the other thing, okay, I'll ask and see if we can get it on the agenda or whatever it is, and, I don't know that I wait at all to see what a
I'm not,
draft agenda looks like.
I'm not aware of any requests that have been deflected where members asked for something on the agenda and hasn't made it there.
I can see Paul wanting to get it early so he can take a look at it, but can it be done? Can it be accomplished?
I get you we can certainly get the draft agenda out to the full board, because the chair and the vice chair see it. I mean, typically you see it on a Tuesday, and typically you see the first draft of the agenda, like for the meeting that we'll have on the 20th of October, typically you'll get that tomorrow. So, I mean, there's a good deal of advanced planning that's going on. I have had direction from some chairs in the past that the chair, although not the current chair, but I have had some chairs who did not allow me to share that draft with the members. And so it went only to the chair. But that draft can be, but that draft that I prepare for the chair and the vice chair can certainly be shared.
Do you need
with
the
all
mail
five.
packet? I mean, he has the preliminary done, so we can get that on a Wednesday, but do you need the mail packet?
No, electronically. And the only reason I used paper tonight is because I didn't receive it electronically.
I didn't mean,
Yeah.
I meant the information packet. I didn't mean whether it's actually this or
I got it
electronic.
electronically. I got it electronically on Friday.
I didn't see it in either account. I just didn't see it.
I didn't see it.
If you said you sent it, I believe you. I just didn't see it.
I clicked on one and it said the envelope was voided. I figured it was the previous
It
meeting.
was the September.
Well,
I can't
We're-
say I
we're
even
working
opened it up
Nancy on
because I
that.
don't do it that way.
And then since I had been in Missouri the whole week, getting back and then finally getting to the package Saturday night was the earliest I was going to get to it anyway.
Or you should give me a call.
No, and I understand you're busy, and every time we ask something means you're doing something. It's easy to ask the question. I'm clear on that, Keith. It's not the first time I've served on a board here in the town, and understanding that the flow down is not the easiest thing in the world, and board members need to be cognizant of that. I'm clear on that.
But for planning purposes, and so that you all can see what's proposed for the agenda, and if you alert us that you thought something was going to be on, or that something needs to be on it, if we get it to you earlier, we get you the draft agenda earlier, then you've got an opportunity to interact and respond. That, gee, I thought this was going to be on, where is it? and we'd still have time to put it on, so that's easily done with the chair's approval.
So we have to be very, very careful not to succumb to the temptation of discussing the agenda item, but only discussing
Subject.
The schedule,
agenda.
yeah, the scheduling.
And specific to this instance, I would like to have seen the Economic Development Committee appointment,
But we don't have any applications.
John Bergeron.
I've asked Jen, I asked Diane, I asked everyone for,
Because I think I even saw it. Okay.
We good?
Any further discussions?
I think we heard a motion.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you very much for watching.
Thank you.
Into the studio audience.
yes.